has been a professional comic illustrator for over 25 years, working primarily as a penciler and inker, but often as colorist, writer, editor, and art director. He's worked with DC Comics, titles like Harley Quinn, Green Lantern, Titans, Superman. He's worked at Marvel, Amazing Spider-Man, Avengers, several X-Men titles. He was also the VP of Special Projects and art director of CrossGen Comics, and a veteran of Top Cow Productions. And he's also written his own book, Arcano. Did I say that right?
Yep, Arcano.
That is Brandon Peterson.
Hello.
Matthew Weldon has worked in comics since 2005. His work's been published by Antarctic Press, Image Comics, DC Vertigo, Capcom, Udon, Overground Comics, and he's also self-published several projects. He was nominated for 2 Harvey Awards, and won the Best All-Ages Comic of 2009 by MTV for the New Brighton Archaeological Society. His current book, Punchline, was created with fellow LibCon guest Bill Williams.
Yes, who's just right out there.
Star Prichard is an artist based out of Austin, Texas. She graduated from Savannah College of Art and Design in the spring of 2014 with a bachelor's degree in animation and a minor in storyboarding. Her webcomic Cast Off is a fantasy adventure comic about a group of magical misfits on the run from the fantasy cops. In 2017, Cast Off won the Start Fair Excellence in Webcomics People's Choice Award. The comic currently updates every Monday and Friday. Star.
I'm the webcomics person at the table.
Yeah. All right, so what we usually do is I've got a list of just general questions for all of you and also questions about your projects. So how good are you at talking while you're drawing?
We'll find out.
All right, so our first character that we have is Spider-Gwen, or Ghost Spider, or whatever she goes, Spider-Woman. So,
All right.
get started and I'll
Have at it.
have you with questions. We believe in you.
Thank you. No, I don't have it right now. I always draw on my iPad, so I try to do the pinch zoom. It doesn't work like that.
I always like to draw.
All right, we've provided a pencil and that's it, and I can see that you all brought your own stuff. So what do you all like to use?
I am a big fan of the color erase pencils. They're super cheap and just they're very smooth. And something about them just feels really nice. I don't know. Action pose.
I always like to draw Spider-Gwen without her mask on, but so I like drawing hair if I can on my characters.
So I use, this is a lead holder. It's like a big chunky thing. When I'm doing kind of just general layout, I use that. If not, I use a regular old mechanical pencil. 0.5 lead, stuff like that. And I tend to use media, India ink markers. I have Sharpies here, so they're not as good as that, but it'll work fine for a demonstration, that's for sure. So.
Yeah, it's all mechanical pencil for me most of the time.
So can you all tell me how you got started in the comics industry?
I kind of I'd always thought it would be fun to do. I did fan art for a long time, and I got into a couple of forums when forums were a thing, but I guess forums are not really a thing anymore. I was drawing for some friends, and I drew I entered an art contest for somebody to get published in the back of their little fan art book, and I came out on top. And the next thing I knew, the writer of that book, which was working for Image, was just like, hey, let's do a book too. So ever since then, I've been doing a lot more independent stuff than anything. I mean, I've tried to pay Ninja Turtles people to let me draw for them, and that is a thing, and I've tried, and it's weird. But
That is something that people do.
yeah, people, they're like, you can go pay as an artist to get your work on a cover, and it's a pretty sweet deal sometimes. But very soon, I've had Street Fighter work done, which was a dream come true, and I'm currently trying to get a Ninja Turtles cover too. So wish me luck.
Star, how did you get started?
I was really into Calvin and Hobbes when I was in like elementary and middle school. And then I thought, my friends say silly things. I'll make a comic about it. And so I got really into doing like the little 4-panel comics for a while. And then I just kept doing it. And now I'm here somehow. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I was telling the story earlier in another panel, but I was like never the biggest art person of my friend group. I was never the most talented one in art class. I'm just the one that didn't stop. And then many years later, many bad drawings later, your drawings get good, and then suddenly you're making a webcomic, and it's like, well, this is my life now. That makes it sound like I don't like it. I love it. If I didn't love it, I wouldn't still be here, but I just kind of fell into it. But it's been a lot of fun, which is why I'm still doing it. How do you draw feet?
I am by far the oldest and fogiest of the people up here. I've been doing it since the 90s, so probably since before most people.
Cross-gen, yeah.
Well, CrossGen was 2000, but
was it?
Marvel and Image with Top Cow, which was Mark Silvestri's studio.
Oh, yeah.
But I got in a very different way. It was before the internet, if you can imagine such a time. Yeah.
Gasp.
We used this thing called mail.
What?
Real slow.
Like email or?
Yeah, exactly. But no, what it was for us was the way that a lot of people did and stuff like that is there are different size conventions. Just like today, this is a little smaller convention, but there are big conventions all across the country, especially during the summer months. And I was in Wisconsin, and there was this big convention in Chicago. And when I was, late teens, just starting college, I gathered a portfolio of work, and I went to the Chicago Comic-Con, and I went to literally they had editors from the big companies like Marvel and DC, and me not knowing any better, I just went up there, and they told me all the stuff I was doing wrong, and they did not cover me work, which isn't a surprise.
Did you push a portfolio under their hotel door room?
No, you normally didn't know where they were staying, but they were sitting at tables. There's lots of legends of guys like following people into bathrooms and asking them to look at their portfolio by shoving it under the stall and stuff like that. I didn't do any of that. I actually just was like heartbroken because I thought I was amazing, and they were telling me all these things like, you need to learn how to draw anatomy. What? That seems like a big thing. It is. And so, but I just, excuse me, I was really, wanting to do it. So I went back and I worked on stuff, and a few guys gave me their business cards, and I would send them samples, and they would give me responses. And after a while, the responses became more focused and positive, and not just sort of work on everything kind of things. And by the next year, I brought my portfolio, which was much better, and I started getting work from small companies like Dark Horse, and there was another company called First.
Oh, yeah.
A small company.
They're still going.
Yeah, I think they came back.
Kinda.
Yeah, and then what happened after that is I started literally working on small stuff while I was still going to college, and it led to me actually doing work is the best way to learn because it's like you have deadlines and you're actually doing stuff and things like that. And I suddenly started getting work offers after that next year from DC, and that led to me getting work at Marvel when I graduated, and I was on X-Men. So it snowballed really quickly, and there was a lot of luck involved, but it's the more, I always say with luck's kind of, is necessary for everything, if you have no luck, it's going to be hard to get anywhere. But you can prepare for that when the good luck is there, you can grab it and use it and have something happen instead of just, letting the opportunity go by. So a lot of the practice we do and stuff is just the idea that, trying to make sure you're ready for those breaks and those opportunities when they do happen. But nowadays, I happened to actually take a bunch of portfolios when I was in the early 2000s, and digital, DeviantArt portfolios and stuff like that have become much more the norm. So it's a very different world, But I think that the key is just making sure you get your work in front of people's eyes in a format that they can see, And if it's good, they'll respond to it. I think you actually have a lot more ability now because
Keep going.
What was that?
Nothing.
You're fine.
The screen is
She's the star, man. Look at her.
My name up in lights. Is this what you wanted, Mom?
I'm new to OBS.
The joke is my mom's in the audience.
That's no joke, yeah, OBS is.
question from Matthew.
Do you tend to work in that sort of contour line drawing approach?
Oh, yeah,
Feeling confident, I know where to
Oh, yeah.
go.
sometimes.
It's like a Geiger approach, you just paint down across a couple of canvas in one shot.
Yeah, and then that's a good question. One of my favorite things, which is blasphemy in a lot of circles, is people like to build up their characters, stick from lines, stick figures, and the structure, and they'll build up the musculature and all this stuff, and that's great. But for dynamic poses and action shots and good figures, I have found personally that I just like to find that silhouette of the character, find it faster, and or it helps me find it fast sometimes, and it helps with like the really dynamic action poses, which is what I focus on more than anything in the world, is foreshortening and good figures where they look like they're actually stretching, hunching, like they're impacting something, for whatever reason. But so silhouette is what I try to aim for most everything these days, just to get a good action shot, and then I'll fill everything in, kind of, if that makes sense. And sometimes I get lucky, and sometimes not so much. I erase all the time, but and that's what I would say. Don't be scared to erase your drawing. If you have a drawing you like, and that was like the hardest thing for me is if you can hunch it over just a little bit more, or get that extra torque in an arm, where they're rearing back. I don't know if I've wandered too far from your question, but
No, it's excellent, because it kind of brings up the difference between something like the Boris Vallejo and the photo, action.
yeah.
They're similar, but they're very different. But I just thought that was a really telling approach right away.
I really
He's gonna go and put that right, oh my God, with a black marker.
yes.
Cool.
It does. I always thought it was weird when people would say, "Oh, I do my morning warm-up sketches and stuff like that," but it helps a lot. And I taught a class just a little while ago, and I was able to get numerous sketches out of this. But I've been doing a lot of live streams lately on YouTube and drawing streams where I would get together with 10 other artists, and we'd have 2 hours to really produce something nice, and there would be a straw poll after the end of that 2 hours and everything. So it's really helped me out a lot too. But yeah, for me, I really aim for just, I want my figures to stand out, and you'll see the same arm on a character throughout the different comic panels and stuff like that. But I want my stuff to be, luscious, and I want my figures to be natural, if I can. Yeah, like lifelike. Animation, I always thought it would be great, but taking animation classes and trying to, it really kind of messed me up too, because I really started despising a lot of animation. I'm like, you're slacking. I would, just kind of yell at the screen, So it made me, in a way, not enjoy animation that I normally probably would have otherwise, because But from panel to panel, I'm a big comics book guy. My book is Punchline on Bill's Table. If you wander out there, from panel to panel, it's got to be the continuity and the figure. I love it. These are all.
I had my pencil bag and I was like, yeah, color. She's mostly white though.
Yeah.
The thing I love about watching, if you go back and watch last year's video too, you can see they all have the same character, but none of them have the same process. So this will be on our YouTube page if you want to watch it later, so you can see.
Get brush pens out of.
I love drawing hair too. One of my heroes I met recently, Adam Warren. He drew Dirty Pair. He draws that Empowered comic. I don't know if anybody recognizes it. I got to meet him, and I've followed him for 20-something years, and he told me when I went to his table, he's like, "You're Matthew Weldon?" He's like, "I have a number of images of yours that I've saved on my computer." He's like, "I love the way you draw hair." And I was like, "Sweet,
Okay.
I'll take it." I was,
All right. Move on to the next character. Amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm gonna jump around the list here a little bit. How y'all feel about Wolverine?
Oh, yeah.
No?
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
like a good ooh, like
Oh,
ooh.
okay. I know Brandon has probably drawn many.
Yes, which version do you want?
Oh,
Whatever version you would like.
But have him wearing a tutu.
I'll do that.
Should
He
be
is not that type of
relaxed.
Wow, that's quite a face there. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm
It's
over
the
it.
last page if you want to look.
all right, let's do this.
I like this reference picture. Yeah, I'm Wolverine. All right.
He can if you want. Absolutely.
I'm gonna go a little different here.
All right. So, Brandon, who are some of your favorite artists currently or artists that inspired you?
Oh, boy, that's a big one. So I got into art, I mean, like most people probably when you're young, there's certain subject matter, especially like fantasy, science fiction, comic book art, just because I really like Star Wars or, TV shows or movies that had that type of stuff. As is bad, I'm old, so like Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica was already things on. And I used to draw, I like to draw the spaceships and stormtroopers and stuff like that in my notebooks in school as a kid. And that led to me becoming really, really heavily into D&D when it was first coming out in the late 70s, early 80s. And so for me, a lot of the guys that I loved, and I never really thought about comic books because I was a farm kid in Wisconsin. And comics were hard to get, but I could get the D&D rules or see movies and TV or books and like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. And I could draw that stuff and, have fun with it. I really like the guys that were doing like Larry Elmore and Keith Parkinson and these guys that were doing all the classic sort of D&D stuff. And when I got into sort of high school is when I started getting into comics because I was a freshman in 1985. I know it's a really long time. But 85 is like a big deal for comic books because it was the first time The Dark Knight came out. And it was the first time that Watchmen came out. And all these sort of classic comic book things. And that really opened my eyes to what, how good comic book artists could be. And it was, Simon Certain was doing Thor. And there was all these guys really doing like iconic runs sort of in that mid-80s period. But the guy that I remember like kind of sticking to and liking was a guy named Michael Golden, who wasn't doing a ton of work. His work came out, it like jumped at me. And he did like Micronauts and he did G.I. Joe and he did a bunch of smaller stuff. And he influenced guys like Arthur Adams, who was a big guy kind of developing right about that time. And by the time I'd gone through school, guys like Silvestri and Jim Lee and kind of these sort of early, image guys that were working at Marvel at that point were still, doing real awesome work, and I got really into that. And then, so that's what I was kind of looking at, like right at the time I was like finishing up high school, getting into college, and deciding that I wanted to have an art career. And those are the guys that I basically were kind of emulating and things. And then when I ended up started getting work in late college, it was based on that sort of approach. But at that point, I started expanding because I really started seeing a lot more people that I liked. I liked Adam Hughes and and things like that. It just sort of developing into different interests and kind of melding styles and stuff like that. I liked Alan Davis a lot at that point. I was going more for naturalistic. Nowadays, honestly, the greatest thing about it is. I was telling somebody this earlier at the table. As you get old, one of the benefits, there's not a whole lot of benefits. I mean, your body starts falling apart and all the awful things that happen. But one of the benefits is your experience is widen, your base is widen. Like when I was young, I had a very different idea of what I liked. I like this thing. I like this food. I like this type of comic book. I like this type of movie. And then as you kind of experience more and more of it, all of a sudden your base widens, and suddenly I find merit in everything. Like, I see tons of guys that don't draw anything like me. I go, but this is really cool how you're doing this little thing here, or this is really cool how you're doing this little piece here. But recently, like, the guy who's like blown me away the most is like Sean Murphy, who works at DC, and he does this real sketchy, almost like primitive style, but it's so dynamic and things like that. And there's, you know, a ton of guys, like I'm really good friends with Frank Cho, and he does these amazing illustrated, like classic illustrations and stuff like that. So yeah, the ballpoint stuff he does. And it's just sort of fascinating how comics, like the last 10 years, has opened up. Literally be styles that sort of define how comics were working. In the 60s, it was Kirby. In the 70s, it was Neil Adams. In the 80s, it was John Byrne, this style thing. In the 90s, it was that Jim Lee, you know, kind of approach. And then the 2000s, it started dispersing, and now I don't think you have anything that you can point to and say, that guy is the guy that's leading the charge type of thing. So that being said, it is a lot, I think there's a lot of merit to it, because it means there's just a ton more styles that are accepted and a ton more approaches. And I find, you know, I tend to find almost all of them have merit and are interesting and bring something unique to the thing. So I guess I had a lot of definite influences in my early years, and that has gone kind of by the wayside as I've gotten older. So,
Yeah.
that kind of answers the question.
Yes, thank you. Matthew, what were your favorites?
I was completely blown away by the guy I mentioned earlier, Adam Warren, because he was the guy that I saw in comic books who drew a gun that looked like a gun, and I was like, wait a minute. And he drew slice of life stuff. He would come in, and he had a special way of drawing hair too, but I'll never forget it. I mean, I was back when Jim Lee was drawing X-Men and all other stuff, and that kind of got me going. Okay, so I'm drawing Wolverine with a man bun because somebody said they wanted beauty Wolverine.
Hey, look, I'm literally drawing him in a tutu, man.
Really happy.
Should I give him pants or no? Do we want stubbly Wolverine legs or?
Hairy legs.
All right, hairy legs, you got it.
That's
Yes, dad socks.
I'm trying to think of some other ones, but I guess the thing that really inspires me is the art style of like what you would see on a dollar bill, like that dollar bill art style, the cross hatching, where the lines, the contour, the face, and the figure. And I know there's a couple other ones. I'm trying to think. Come back to me. Lifeline.
Star.
All right, so I am very much the young chicken at the table. I grew up on the internet. So all of the artists that I really enjoy are either working on anime or they're making webcomics. These days, I'm really into stuff that has a lot of like well-defined shapes and really, really like thick, standout line art. Like I call it chunky, but that makes it sound gross. I like the big, expressive inks, big, bold line art, spot blacks, all that nonsense. So I really, really, really enjoy seeing other artists that can do that sort of thing. Studio Trigger right now is one of my they used to be Gynax, they did Kill la Kill, they did Little Witch Academia. They have a movie out now, Promare. I haven't seen it yet, but I want to. It looks real cool.
It is cool.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Oh, is it good?
Yeah, well, they just popped off in theaters, and this might be blasphemy too, but I like English dub, and they have a good English dub.
Well, I like the dubs because you don't have to stare at the subtitles. And
That's true. You can appreciate the animation.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really good, yeah.
But yeah, my whole thing is like I'm easy to please. You have big, bold line art in your work, I'm probably gonna like it. But yeah, so let's see, actual other comic artists. I mostly read webcomics these days. One of my favorites is actually Mad Rupert. She does the comic Sakana. She's done a couple things on regular show comics. I'm not sure what she's up to right now, but she does all her work traditional black and white inks only. It's very, very cool, very like big spot blacks. I'm just like, yes. What else? I like a lot of video games, and so I get a lot of inspiration from that as well. Things like, you can't really see it in my work because I don't emulate too much, but Ace Attorney was a big one of mine. Just like they're kind of fun character designs. There's another, are people just now looking at what I'm
Another tutu.
Oh, yeah!
That was gonna be my surprise, that's why.
You can probably fit it
All right, that's it.
Yes! Tutu Squad!
His booty's
If anyone needs
showing.
markers, I've got pink. Well, I've got red, but it's kind of pink. Or I could give him a blue one. Tutu!
You guys are amazing.
Thank you.
I'm trying to do like a montage of all of his numerous costumes.
He's got like a big X on his shirt at one point, right?
Yes.
I grew up
He
on,
has
like,
the- Right now, I mean, there's different times he's had the like little claw stripes, which I'll give him.
I grew up on X-Men Evolution, so that's the one I'm most familiar with, the TV show.
I grew up with the 90s X-Men.
Yeah, same.
Spooky, Swamp Thing.
Hmm.
Bernie lived in Austin for quite a while before he passed away.
That's a sad day.
Yeah, I met him, I first moved here about 5 years ago, and I met him, and he was getting over his first round of being sick, and then it ended up not being his last, so. But yeah, a lot of people in Austin. It's become quite the community here.
Does anyone have a question out here?
This is too dark, but I'm going for it anyway. Yeah.
I'm doing the tribute where he's got the hand like, come get some.
Do you guys ever think we'll see Wolverine and Deadpool together again?
Hmm.
I think you will, because now that Disney owns everything again, there's no problems. But what type of thing that he is, who knows? If it'll be the Deadpool, it's hard R Deadpool. The story behind that is kind of a weird thing in that one of the big casualties that's happening in Hollywood right now is special effects are being farmed from the United States. Now that we have really fast internet connections to Asia, a lot of Indian studios, a lot of things like that are doing the special effects, and they undercut the cost that can be done in America, which is, it's just kind of the nature of animation and special effects nowadays that it's harder to produce in America just from the costs. So there was a company called Digital Domain that was out in LA, and they were doing a lot of movie work, but they were getting less and less, and kind of as a last-ditch effort, the guy that runs that company, he got a hold of the guys at Fox who owned the X-Men, had the rights to the X-Men properties from Marvel because of deals done, like Sony has Spider-Man, Fox has the X-Men characters. And he had basically said, I will fund with my own money, with just a little, like a shoestring budget, a movie so that my studio has work to do because we're not getting hired by the movie companies anymore. But, we want to have the profits and stuff. And they went through the thing, and they didn't want to give up anything they thought was valuable to this guy just to play around with and see what he could come up with. And since Deadpool had been so mishandled in the X-Men movie, they said, go ahead and take Deadpool. I mean, we think that's kind of a dead thing. We goofed it up. And he made it so successful that, it ended up saving Digital Domain and stuff. And I know he was at least involved in the second one. I don't know if he's going to be involved further. But it is just kind of interesting that was just like, the reason that happened was completely because they didn't have any faith in it whatsoever. They just do whatever you want. The problem that you have with a lot of these movies, from what I understand from talking to people, is when when nobody thinks it's going to be a success, everybody wants to stay far, far away from it. Because they don't want to have, if it fails, them to have the sort of association with the failure. Once it becomes successful, everybody wants to get on board.
Oh, you said Deadpool, so I was just like.
So yeah, it's everybody wants to have the association. So right now, that's what's going on. Is now that it's successful, everybody wants to get their fingers in and say, "Hey, I'm part of it." Hollywood is very. There's an awful lot of people that make money, and you don't really know how they're involved in any of the process. It just seems like they're around and interfering. From friends that I have that work in the industry, which seems comics are great that way in that it's honestly I get so little, like direction. It's basically they hire me because they want to do what I need me to do what I do, and if they don't micromanage me because of that. I might like 1 out of every 30 pages. It might be somebody saying, "Hey, could you fix that? It looks a little weird." All right. It's because it's 1 out of 30 pages. I'm not going to complain. And probably they're right. If it looks good, if somebody's confused by something I've drawn, I've not done my job right. That's kind of how I always feel. It should be pretty clear, pretty obvious. So confusion, that type of thing, I have a tendency to, agree with them and move on. Get it on the next page is the motto I always have. So.
I can't draw Deadpool from memory, but I was inspired.
Ruffles. Sorry, I don't know what I was doing.
No,
on that
it's
one.
good.
Yeah, so I just did True Wolverine. It is a little obscured. I was
like
talking
your
too much.
style, 'cause you took it and you translated it into your own style.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah, that's always difficult.
That reminds me a bit of Scott Pilgrim.
I get that. I get Steven Universe a lot.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so people, the average Joe who doesn't really know much about art either looks at something and thinks it's anime or it's Scott Pilgrim. Or it's comic book style. And so mine's kind of like my normal style that I use like for my webcomic is kind of a weird hybrid of both. And I've actually gotten messages on Instagram and what have you saying, "What's the name of your art style?" My friend suggested I answer with Starless Super Special Tangy Blend. It's like, yup, that's me.
Tangy.
I don't know. Don't eat my art unless I tell you you can. Probably not good for you.
Well, we can go on to the next one. There's talking too much.
And I finished drawing Deadpool really quickly.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know.
I don't know what he looks like.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of making this
Can I
up.
have your attention, please?
Oh, I didn't even finish
At
mine.
2:16, there will be a fan fiction writing presentation with Shannon Brewer in the classroom. Ages 11.
Got swords and he has legs. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So what can we look forward to from you? What's upcoming?
More webcomics. Always.
Podcast off.
Yes. That one's gonna run me a little while longer. So. Woohoo.
Matthews? Punchline?
More Punchline. I'm actually very excited about a number of projects that I have coming up. I have been hanging out with the creator of Earthworm Jim lately, and he wants to write me a story because he really likes my artwork. And I actually got a chance to do a number of Earthworm Jim drawings for his current campaign. They're going to be used as trading cards for his book that will be released in just a month or two. But there's alongside that, I have a couple of other books that I'm really excited about. I'm gonna rip off Nightcrawler for one of my own little independent books, but instead of a purple cloud, I'm gonna make it a pink cloud that he or she teleports around in, and I'm thinking about giving them invisibility powers, be able to walk through walls, because you can teleport through walls, right? Why can't you just slowly walk through walls? But like I said, I'm gonna have a pink cloud, and I'm thinking about naming it Blush for the title. So
I didn't make y'all start another character because I was already getting the look that I need.
It's cool. I finished my Deadpool.
do we have time for one more, or are we getting
I think
kicked
we only
out?
got like 5 minutes.
Speed round.
We can do this.
2 minutes.
Super speed round.
All right, what's easy? Ninja Turtle?
Ninja Turtle.
I've never drawn a Ninja Turtle before.
Their
That's all the
picture.
paper I got anyways.
And Brandon, what are you working on?
Super special speed round.
Right now I've just been at DC. I just finished up some Shazam stuff, and I am going back to working on Superman stuff.
Ooh. And he has a lovely Superman print, which I'm gonna get before I leave,
Oh.
because I saw my husband eyeballing it. But he had my daughter, so he can't carry around anything important.
Well, I can go. What?
Speed round.
Oh.
Choose wisely your turtle.
Mikey. I didn't watch the show much as a kid, but he was always my favorite because he parties. What do his arms do? Woo!
All right, I am doing this ridiculously fast, but it will be somewhat recognizable. I promise.
Make them holding a taco.
Okay.
See, I'm used to, don't the turtles eat pizza? What?
This is
It's a taco!
He stabbed a taco.
I did it. Yeah.
He stole Deadpool's taco.
Oh no.
That's a horrible Deadpool.
Action lines. It's a comic, it's gotta have action lines.
Yoink.
The taco. Shabam! It's a taco. Do I have time to color the taco? No. Am I gonna do it anyway? Yes.
Does that make sense?
Meg's wait. Yes.
Yoink.
I did it really simple. It's just literally
Shoving a pizza.
ahead the pizza.
Thank you all so
right.
much.
I did it.
See our next group.
All right.
Please stop by their booths.
Yeah, anybody wants these? I'm just gonna snap some pictures.
Take your drawings if you.
Yeah.
Take
On that.
your
Those are. I don't have my phone, so I can't actually take pictures. But if anybody wants them,
Do you want to take your booth?
yeah.
Graduated in '95.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. And it's a bunch of